What's up, Rockstars? Today I have some very interesting indie titles to show you. I have some huge news on some things. One of the things I've been covering for a long time, one of these games is Kaput. The company's going under, and it's a travesty. It's really bad. It's a train wreck. I'll talk about that. Talk about some possible oddities around Awakened Realms' new announcements. There's some weirdness there I want to discuss with you, and a host of other things. So stay tuned for all of that. Now, before we dive into things, I do want to take a quick moment, just 1 minute, to thank my sponsor, Into the AM. They make great shirts just like this. You guys see me wear them all the time. I continually get comments. My daughter actually asked if that's true. And it is 100%. Often I'll take a picture of it or anything like that, but people constantly comment on these shirts. They think it's great. They want to know where I got it. It's actually really, really cool. And it's because it's just great quality. It's eye-catching. It's dynamic, and I love them. They're fantastic. Online, they have some great deals going all the time, and I have a code you can use down in the description below to save 10% off anything. Anything on their site, any sale, it'll add 10%, or it'll take away 10%, and that's right there for you. By the way, they have these awesome packs where if you buy multiples, you get to save an additional. So this up to 30% plus then by 10%, for instance, something like that is great. Let's take a look at some of the new arrivals real quick. This one is absolutely stellar. This Nature's Flow tee is exquisite. I love the coloration of it. It's very the orange, right from the sun to the mountains to the trees there, just super cool. And then of course this Floral Orbit tee, again, looks amazing. And of course a host of other great designs. Guys, go ahead and check them out. Again, Into the AM, there's a link down in the description below. You save 10%, get a quality shirt or 2 or 3, and you will not regret it, I promise. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into Lone Wolf, the miniatures game. This is going to be launching, it says Q2 2023. It's actually April, so very, very soon. If you didn't know, April's right around the corner now. It's amazing how fast 2023 has gone. Let me know if you think that's the case, because as far as I'm concerned, it's been a blur. I swear it was just Christmas. It's wild that it's already in March, heading towards April. But this is a big deal. This is awesome to see this come back. If you didn't know, Lone Wolf, you see this, what is a game book? Lone Wolf was a game book. And what is that? Well, that is essentially what, we used to play back in the day before all these video games and whatnot. Essentially, it's a choose your own adventure. It's exactly what half of our narrative games, more than half, 99% of our narrative board games are just game books. It's just read and then make a decision or do an action in the game and then turn to page this, turn to page that. That's what this is. It's a story, much more like a novel kind of story thing where you're the main character and you get to make decisions and navigate through it to where it ends up being your story. They have made a huge comeback. They've been doing a lot of new stuff. One of these is this miniature game. Now, this is actually going to be partnered with Stone Sword Games. If you didn't remember, that's the makers of Senjutsu Battle for Japan. So it's bound to be a quality campaign, so that's cool. Really happy to see that. I've not seen what the final iteration of Senjutsu Battle for Japan looks like after mass production, but I'll be sure to take a look at that. And either way, that's super cool that that's going to be coming, again, April 2023 on Kickstarter. They do have a mailing list you can join, so you can go ahead and get on that. And again, I'll link down to this website as well, so you can kind of take a look at what Lone Wolf is, what they're all about, kind of what's going to be happening there. But it sounds pretty darn cool. Will be solo and multiplayer. Multiplayer, I don't know if that means co-op or if that means against others. I'm not sure. We'll find out. Next up, this is cool. Bullet and Claire Penny Arcade promo. This is $12.99, and all the profits go to a mental health charity of your choice. You get 3 choices here, so you can go in and pick that and then go ahead and add that to your card. It's for Bullet, and it's an actual legit, you can use this in the game. This is the Level 99 games that did this. And I think that's super cool. Wanted to give them a shout out here early on in the video so you guys knew. Again, everything's going to be linked down in the description below. Go ahead and get a cool promo for your Bullet game and donate to mental health. I think that is awesome. Next up, Graywin's Guide to a Therodor 5e compatible. This is huge. This is by DM Stash, and they do some great work. They really do. I don't agree with every stance they've had on everything, but their product, what they make, like these STLs, I've printed some of them before. I've bought some of their minis before. They are fantastic. Fantastic stuff. They do great work. And as you can see, it blows a lot of the minis that you're used to getting out of the water. Just super cool stuff. But this is 100%. They've been invested in this world that they've made. And so everything's cohesive. Everything fits. Everything's to scale. Everything has wonderful detail. Super duper cool stuff. So feel free to check it out. You're going to get some cool minis. You're going to get some great looking books. Fantastic looking books. If they look anything like that. Great art. There's a whole lot of options too. They don't make it to where you just have to like get everything. You can pick and choose and see kind of what you want here when it comes to this. They have all these different packs. So check them out. Again, link in the description below. Next up, Hellbringer. This is an interesting one. Very indie. This is, it wears the Diablo inspiration on its sleeve and in its type font. So this is kind of interesting. I'm not sure exactly how to feel about this. It's actually doing fairly well. 155 backers, 11,000 raised, 19,000 is what they're saying they need. I know it says it's inspired by Diablo, but I don't know. See, I'm still waiting for that real true ARPG-like feeling. So for me, an ARPG, and I'm a huge fan of ARPGs, and I've played a lot. Diablo, one of many. Don't even ask me how much time I spent on Titan Quest or Grim Dawn or any of those others. I mean, it's all the old sacreds, right? So look, you need to be able to kill a whole bunch of enemies. The normal enemy should not be a threat. That's a power romp. That's just you plowing through them. But then you get these elites that intermix with them and can buff them and buff each other. And so getting multiple elites on you, that becomes a challenge. And then the bosses are definitely a huge deal. Additionally, it needs to have a ton of loot to the point where you're sitting there debating and hemming and hawing on whether you want this or that because they both are good and they both fit into a build because it's a very RPG focused thing where you have all these different builds you could do. So definitely big on action, weak enemies, strong elites, hard bosses, lots of builds, lots of loot. The reason I say all that is because, well, thematically, like the look and feel of it seems fairly close. It does have a lot of like the writing on the stats, but that's because you're going to be changing it all the time. I can kind of see that. It would have been nice to maybe put those on cards too, and then just slot the cards underneath or something like that. But even then, I don't know. There's a lot. I'm not a game designer. I didn't put much thought into it. I literally just saw that off the top of my head. It's not that great. Don't listen to me. But either way, like you are going to be kind of scribbling on that, but that's because you're going to be changing your stats a lot. However, one of the interesting things that I found is right down here. You're going to get a ton of different cards, a ton of dice, all that stuff right here. So the monster tier gets the loot and merchant expansion, and then the quest and events expansion. And I feel especially the loot and merchant, but both of those are so core to an ARPG experience that if you're going to say you're inspired by Diablo, I don't think that's an expansion. I think it's base game stuff. I'm not saying the base game doesn't come with a lot of stuff. I'm just talking about the advertising versus the inspiration versus what you're actually getting. Seems a little odd to me on that. I think I would expect a ton of different loot and very like strong trying to decide which one you want to get. And honestly, they don't talk a lot about that. Like this page doesn't focus a huge amount on that kind of stuff, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for different builds. I'm looking for a great loot system where I'm constantly getting upgrades and sets of armor and all this other kind of stuff. And it just doesn't actually seem to be showing that a whole lot. So anyway, feel free to check it out. And again, I didn't watch all the videos, do all that. Maybe there's some more information there. But yeah, inspired by Diablo? Yeah, kinda, I guess. Next up, the Blackkeep Hell's Gate. This might look familiar. That's because I've backed it before. I might back it. You guys, I have a question for you. So hold on. I'll in on that. This is by James Franzen. He's done 10 others and delivered 10 others. So he does like, well, not quite. I think 1 or 2 of them actually were canceled. But the ones that funded, he actually did deliver. It's fascinating. This is so interesting. And I don't just like him because he has a skull wearing like a fur cloak and a crown. Though I do. Also, this is interesting because I've covered it before right here. And like, this is the first image you got, and that's rough. That is indie. And this is definitely indie. So now the first thing you see is this big art piece, and then you see this, and look how much better that looks. That looks so much better. So much better. That is great. That is really, really nice to see. Again, not perfect, but really good. It really is. They got the painted minis here. So it looks like a board game, right, when they show it off like this. So that's nice too. This is interesting because essentially he makes games essentially for his fans on the cheap. And it goes to show that not every game, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Every game seems to want to say, I want to be mass marketed, mass produced in China, or I don't want to make a game at all. And I feel that's not right. Especially when you're first starting out, when you're indie, everybody wants to get that $1 million campaign where they're making bukus of bucks. And then, you know, there's this huge thing and they're delivering everywhere. This guy right now is, I mean, again, he's not funded yet, but we'll make it this for 20 people. He would make it for 20 people. 3D print the minis. Actually, they're not doing 3D printing anymore. They're doing Sealcast, actually. He does address that, actually, too. So, it's somewhere. Anyway, they're doing Sealcast now instead of Sealcast casting, final production miniatures. And the casting's already been done. All they gotta do is print them, right? All the art, all that kind of stuff is there. It's just, it's really cool that he's willing to do that. Essentially, what you're getting is what most companies would consider almost a prototype. But that's the game. But it's a game, and he got it out there, and he funded it. And I think that's awesome. I think it's really cool. One thing I'm kind of debating is, wouldn't it be interesting, because I don't know another channel that would really do this, at least at this scale, to get this. In other words, I use the Patreon money, I use the ad revenue, I use my kind of set aside funds, knowing I won't recoup the costs. But I get this to show you guys, because really it'd be me and what, 20 other people that ever own this game. Like that's a unique piece of gaming there, I think, right? It's like, this is a game that was made for like 20 people. And then I would be one of them, and I'd be able to show it off and unbox it and talk about it. And you guys let me know. Is that something you'd want? Again, like, this is community run. So if you think it's a bad idea or a stupid idea, let me know. But if you think that'd be something you might be interested in, if you're like, yeah, I'd watch you unbox a super duper indie, ultra indie thing and show that, hey, you can deliver a game on the cheap for a couple $1,000 and still deliver it because you made it appropriately. Let me know. I think it'd be kind of interesting. I don't think every game needs to go to China. I don't think every game needs to be like, I need a minimum of 1,000 people because I have to mass produce, because I have to do it overseas and I have to import it that way and I have to ship it on this freight and I have to do this and I have to do that. I don't understand the focus on that. If your first thing is just 3D print some minis and send it out to some friends, and then your next one is 3D print some minis, but then also add all more card printing from a local service or something like that, or maybe even bought a printer that could just do some cards, just some basic cardstock stuff, and you laminate it. I mean, in your garage. I mean, there's so many options when it comes to making games and kind of building an audience and slowly growing, as opposed to big or bust. In other words, I don't want to make my game. I do not want to deliver my game unless I can make it in China. I love the fact that this proves otherwise. Now, it has not funded yet, so we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's a moot point. But I think it's pretty cool. I think it makes me smile seeing Kickstarter used that way. Encounter Shattered Waste did fund. They are at 32,000. They wanted 25,000. And you guys talked to me a little bit about the price, because as you know, I'm funding at the 55. Which gives me those paper standees that you see there, or cardboard standees, really, or card stocks. I don't know what you want to call it, whatever. I don't know, with the white. But the acrylic version, where you get all the acrylic stuff, is 125, which is expensive, it seems, because there's not that many. There's there's 16 characters and 16 enemies. So there's not a whole lot here. But what you guys said is that actually this is quite expensive to do. You're limited in what manufacturers can do this. And I guess that makes sense too. I don't know if it's necessarily, it might be more per, but that's only at lower quantities, right? Because the molds are expensive, but then they get really cheap depending on how many you do. So I think some of it depends on how many you do. And you do get the neoprene mat and the foil cards and stuff like that. So I might upgrade, because it does look a lot of fun. And if it's something I can get to the table quick, then all the better for it. And then I may as well make it nice. So still hemming and hawing, but for now I'm at the 55. You guys let me know if you think I should upgrade or not, though. All right, next up we have the Origins lit. 1 week to go. It's right there. Well, not the Origins lit. This is the Meeples Champion that they offer for $9.99. I'll do a review here literally in the next couple days. I wanted to get some more. In fact, Conan is underneath there right now. I wanted to try other board games, some staples of mine. Here's a big game like Conan. How does it handle with that, especially with how deep the well is and stuff like that? I'll talk about all that in the review, of course, so stay tuned for that. Next up, AR Vault Story Dice. I covered this in my last news video, so I'm not going to cover it too much now. Just note that it's essentially molded miniature dice. So they're all dice, but they're all also kind of fancy. Now, one of the interesting things here, and by fancy, I mean, I don't know, I think they look kind of ugly myself. But I know a lot of people think they look cool. And I also feel like a lot of them would be uncomfortable. Or dice already, like as it stands now, in board games are rarely accurate. They're rarely completely random. If you feel your board game dice favors a 6 or a 1 or a 4, it probably does. They're definitely not, you know, like casino grade, perfect, you know, perfectly tuned stuff there. Most of them would fail any kind of roll test you did. However, not everybody's focused on that either. Like this obviously isn't. What's interesting is this. So one of you guys let me know about this, and I did look into it. This is Orbadice by Blaster Light. Now this has not delivered yet. It's they've come into some issues when it comes to the mass production. Essentially, what these are, they're all round, and to get it to stop, it's hollow, and then it has these little grooves in this ball, this like little ball bearing that eventually just stops, and that stops it on a side, which is kind of cool. But the mold process leaves some like ridges and stuff like that, so they're not completely random. They're really working on it though. They're like rolling them 1,000 times and seeing the distribution, blah 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 blah. Okay, but what's interesting is these molded dice were created by an ex-Awaken Realms employee. So he worked for Awaken Realms and did a lot of the board game stuff there, and then came and did these sculpted dice. And now AR is like, hey, we should do these sculpted dice. So I just think it's kind of interesting, and I imagine that it was some kind of discussion behind the scenes. I don't think there's anything like negative about it or anything like that. I just think that naturally, even if it's not like officially like, yeah, management says let's go for this, even if it's just with your buddies or something like that, you're just throwing around ideas. One of the ideas might have been something like, hey, let's sculpt some dice. You know, people love dice. People pay for dice. Sculpted dice are cool. Then they leave and they go and do it. And then Awaken Realms eventually goes and does it. I just think that's kind of interesting. I don't think there's anything, again, negative about it at all. I just find that kind of funny that happened. And you can see the different versions or the different ways they took it, which is kind of interesting as well, right? Maybe it'll show the inside. Because I kind of described that without even showing it. I think they do. The roller. Let's see. Their latest update kind of shows it, at least the issues with it. That they're running into from the mass production. And that's, I mean, again, mass production's hard. It really is. Come on now. How do you do it? Show me. Okay, we'll go to the update. I want to show you guys real quick because I thought it was kind of interesting. Number 26. Right. No. Okay, where is it? Is it the one before that? Yeah, here we go. See, there's a roll distribution right here. See? So essentially, it's like there's a little ball in there that'll stop. And then they also had like a, you know, the little round foot. Again, it's crazy how much it can go, but they're definitely working on it. That's kind of cool. Okay, next up, Epic 7 Arise. Farside Games issues. Let's talk about this because I think this is a little bit more nuanced than a lot of people are looking into it. So Farside Games is delivering Epic 7 Arise. And they haven't like promised me a copy or anything like that. I showed off the prototype and they said, don't play it. It's not like the version you got isn't for play. So I was like, okay. So I just unboxed it. The minis looked cool. So I guess there's that. And it's definitely anime inspired. Okay. And it has some cute little enemies too, like a little frog guy and stuff. Okay. Anyway, what's the issue? Well, first of all, as you can see, they're apologizing a lot. And I say that because, of the next thing. But for this one, they are apologizing. Now they're apologizing at this point, but this point's a little late. So what happened? Well, obviously prices increased. This was a very indie thing that they did, right? When it came to this, they had 4,000 backers, fairly good, but they're a brand new company and they're just getting used to this manufacturing and stuff like this. And they ended up through either development or through cost cutting or a mix between the two, changed what you're getting a little bit. Where like essentially they promised these artifacts and they're not getting these artifacts. You're getting less or more, whatever. There's some dice missing. If I go down here, actually, some people mentioned it. Stretch goal custom dice, stretch goal improved tray. Some people were missing artifacts, 2 standard dice, but 4 were pictured, only received 2. Acrylic standees and all out stretch goal characters. Apparently there's some people who are like missing the standees, like the standee part of it. I don't know. It's kind of confusing. Not everybody's gotten everything, and some people just seem happy with it. In fact, they're starting to pour in more like, hey, this is actually great. Some people are, some people aren't. Let me kind of explain my take on this. First of all, Communication is key, and that is something that they definitely need to do. They needed to say this before, not afterwards. So that's definitely something that they should learn from. Oopsies, indeed. Definitely got to communicate that going forward. Again, set people's expectations appropriately. That being said, this isn't that different from a lot of other things. I've been covering these things for a while. I've bought a couple games, and so it happens where sometimes, for instance, Conan, one of my favorite games, they had stretch goals that weren't used. There's still stuff in there that's not been used. A lot of the like chair tokens and stuff like that, just they were never used. They were just stretch goals, but not part of the game. There's other games that have done stuff like, hey, we promised all these cards, but it turns out, or dice. Dice was one of them. I can't remember the game, but one of them gave you less dice. They're like, hey, we told you this, but it turns out you never need to roll that many ever. Like, you don't need that many. That many is literally not enough, as much as you need. So we like lessened it or whatever. And then some people were like, well, yeah, but you should have done that. And we'd have extras that we could put around the table. Valid point. But what I'm saying is, as you develop games, the amount of cards you might need changes, the amount of stats you might need change. Perhaps you thought you wanted these characters, but then you don't, or whatever. It depends on where you're at in development. But during the development process, stuff can get cut. The math can work out differently to where you didn't need that, or you're solving this by doing this instead. A lot of times they're adding stuff, like Stormside adding walls and doors and stuff like that, right? So it just depends on which way it swings. The important thing, again, is to communicate it. And then, of course, there's cost-saving stuff. At this point, right now, as long as I get pretty much to the game, I'm happy, because there's so much crap, and I'm about to cover another one. There's so much crap where you just don't get the game. You're just screwed. Just out of luck. So if it comes to the point where there have to be cost-cutting things to deliver the game, I'm okay with that too. Darkest Dungeon did this. It's not a great example in the fact that people aren't happy about it either, but with those tuck boxes and all that stuff, right? They did all that because they were trying to save the cost so they could actually deliver it. So there was a whole lot of other issues there, but that's the idea. And other companies have done that too, where they've had to like try and adjust things, or, you know, they can try and just launch another campaign to pay for it, or they can ask you for more money, or they can try to make it work some other way, like cutting things off. But again, communicate, if nothing else, like the bare minimum. So that's definitely something they need to do. But I'm more upset about the communication than it actually missing, if that makes sense. If they deliver the game and they didn't give me all the dice, but you know, they delivered it from a super indie, I'm okay with that. It's not like it's Come On or something like that, right? I mean, these guys, they were trying to have another campaign and it didn't fund. So like literally this is all the money that they've gotten, and they're just trying to make this game deliver. It's kind of like this one, right? Where it's like, hey, look, I'll do it based off of how much I get funded. So if I don't get funded a lot, well, then I'm just going to print it at home. You know, you're going to get some laminated cards or whatever. Like you do what you got to do to get it out there based off your funding. So anyway, that's that. But let me know. What I do appreciate at least is this word here. And I say that because Subterra 2 has none. You can read this update and you will not find an apology or any kind of apology in any of this. And in fact, it's really just talking about how pretty much Peter just wants to be done with this and move on. And while I can understand that, it's an incredibly selfish thing to do when you've gained so much money from backers, because it all totaled up to be quite a bit. And then to not deliver at the end of all that is kind of a bummer. And again, the fact that there's not even a single apology, not even I'm sorry I have to write this. It's so cold-blooded. So cold-blooded. It really does suck. So what is this? First of all, I hate that he named it February update. Like, because people might skip it, right? If it's just called that. This is a very important update. What it's saying is essentially Inside the Box board games is no more. They are gone. They're not going to be a company anymore. And so how it works over there, from my understanding in Europe, is essentially everything's liquidated. Everything's sold off to pay their debts. That includes employee wages. That includes any other bills that they have, stuff like that. And they'll use any means necessary to do that. That includes finding buyers who then get that stuff. Now, there's talk about Tim, the designer, who does seem to be putting backers more first and actually kind of interacting with the community a lot more. And he's wanting to get it to where people get their games. But I have some serious doubts. If it depends on what this buyer is, right? We don't know yet. But if it's a buyer that actually wants to deliver it, I guess that's fine. They'll expect to be charged again, I would think. They're not just going to like buy these games and then also deliver it for free. Like, why would you do that? If you're buying it, it's to make money, right? So what that looks like, I don't know. There's like a small glimmer of hope, but it's just a glimmer. It really is. In fact, probably the best update here is the fact that Peter's leaving, because I can't imagine all this time later, all of the lack of updates, all of this, and not even a sorry, not even a my bad, not an apology, nothing. Unfortunate. I think Tom said it very well. Very glad to be rid of you. Good riddance. Don't make another board game if you don't appreciate the money that you got from people enough to even say sorry. Somebody in the comments mentioned, oh, it was maybe a lawyer told him to look. You can still put an apology in there. First of all, you don't have to like listen to the lawyer. Second of all, you could certainly put an apology in there. It's not bad to say, hey, even if it's this, I'm sorry. You know, I had to write this, or sorry, I couldn't write sooner, or whatever, some kind of emotion besides, hey, I'm leaving and I can't wait to be done with it, essentially. Anyway. Yeah, so if you back to Subterra 2, I'm sorry. I doubt you're getting your game. Maybe you will, but if you are, you're still paying for it, that's for sure. That's all I have, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on some of these indie games. Well, before I leave, I did want to show you, I did get an airbrush, and I did do my first little airbrushing. Wanted to share. It's not very good. I thinned it with water even. My thinner is delayed. But I was really excited. So I put it in water and it was crappy, but just base coats, I'm going to wash and dry brush it. This is a Hydra from Mythic Battles Pantheon, but it's also in my Conan one too. So I was sitting there, it was gray. I'm like, I'll airbrush it real quick. So anyway, I might have some content coming up around that as well. Guys, thank you so much. I'll talk to you guys again very soon. Again, I will be reviewing that. So stay tuned for that. I also have another unboxing that you guys may not know about, so that'll be coming up here soon. With that, take care. Bye, guys.